Support small business, woo! My very yellow collection over here. I would caution you against this. I look like Baymax. You can kind of never have enough too many project bags. Okay, you can, but give them the gift of future yarn. We're just gonna film all the different corners of my office until I figure out which corner I like the best. What is on your Christmas wish list? If you're new here, I'm Dawn. This is Tangled Together, where I talk about my knitting hobby and the other things in life that get tangled up in it. As the holiday season is so close, I thought I would put together a video of gift ideas for knitters and crocheters, fiber crafters. Yeah, because I find these videos are great for like trying to get ideas for, you know, people in my life. Like I'll look up an interest they have and try and find a gift idea list for them so I can get them something that will actually be useful and they'd like. Let me silence my phone. But also I find these lists helpful as well. Like as somebody who knits, I have watched like knitting gift guides to get ideas, for other folks who might be into knitting or crocheting, like especially like I do less crochet, so getting ideas of like what crocheters would find useful, I find very helpful. But also like to give myself ideas, like when somebody asks me like, hey, what's something I could get you? What would you like for the holidays? Like I'm at a point in my life where very grateful to be at this point where I don't need a lot of things. Like we have a lot of stuff for our house. We kind of don't have any like big ticket or like even smaller items that we necessarily need, and if we need it we tend to go out and buy it, so it's more of like want. And I'm at a point where I kind of want less stuff overall, except for like, I'm like, if you want to get something for my kid, great, she will love it. If you're trying to look for gifts for myself and my husband, we've been asking for a lot more experiences. But some knitting things, there are definitely some things, as I've been kind of putting this list together, thinking over like, what are things that I necessarily wouldn't go out and buy for myself, but would really enjoy having and would make a hobby I'm already doing much more enjoyable or like related to that. Let's dive into the list. So as I said earlier, this list is probably mostly geared towards knitters because that's the primary thing that I do. But there are a lot of things on this list that I think especially crocheters would also like, as well as like maybe even some like cross-stitcher. Cross-stitcher? That sounds like cross-fitting and less sewing. Or like people who sew and stitch and all of that, because it is kind of fiber and a lot of hand-related things. First on my list is a handy-dandy yarn bowl. This is something that like maybe see if they have a yarn bowl already, because I know a few people that have a couple, and I actually have two. I have this one, which is just a inexpensive wood one I got from Joann's when they were going out of business. I'm gonna set that right here. And I also have a ceramic one that I've had for longer, but I have not been using recently because I'm worried about it getting knocked off with a toddler and two dogs running around. An ear broke off once already and I had to glue it back on, and I just don't want that to happen again because it's a little yarn bowl that's got like a sheep head on it. But yes, a yarn bowl is very useful. There are all sorts of different designs. There are a lot of small independent artists, and I will try and put some links to some ideas down in the description, and I'm going to focus on small independent creators because I don't want to support billionaires. I want to support fellow crafters and small businesses and stuff like that. So honestly, you can find a lot of these types of things in local craft fairs, local handmade shops, and I encourage you to look there. So yes, a yarn bowl, very useful, you know, holds some yarn in it, and it keeps the yarn from, as you're pulling on it, it keeps it from bouncing all over the place. So if you know someone in your life who runs into that problem, yarn bowl might be the way for you. Now, if you are looking for, somebody who could use a yarn bowl type thing, but they're much more of a knitter on the go, I do bring the yarn bowl with me to like my knitting meetup, but that's usually like we're seated at a table, we're not moving around much. But I would suggest looking at a ball minder. I'm going to pull mine out. This one's nice too because it collapses, so it folds up really nicely. So yeah, you can hold this on here. This even has a little clippy doodad that you can wear this around your wrist. I have used this a couple times, like walking around the park. Usually I keep park projects in a smaller bag, but I have used this at the park. Works really great. Spins. This one even has, to make all the noise in the world, this one even has a little magnetic attachment that you can set it down so it can sit on a table and spin. I have brought this with me to like cafes and breweries for knitting meetups. Really enjoyed that. So yes, that's a really great suggestion if you've got somebody who does a lot of knitting on the go and just to make their life a little bit less chaotic with yarn bouncing all over the place. Hi, Ripley. Hi, sweetie. Now, if you have somebody that you think either they have a yarn ball or yarn minder, or you just don't think that's really their vibe, project bags. You can kind of never have too many project bags. Okay, you can, but project bags are a very good gift. And I think they're also something that a lot of people like. I bought my first project bag after knitting for like 9 to 8 years. So I think it's also something that a lot of people like don't necessarily think to like spend their money on, but it makes things so nice. This one, the Etsy shop actually is not selling them anymore. They seem to be on a break, but I'll put some links to some very similar ones. I got a bunch of stuff in here because I'm currently using it, but it's got a bunch of little pockets. It's got a nice big container for your yarn and project. It pulls up so nothing's gonna fall out. And I like this one because it has, you can like throw this over your wrist. This is referred to as a field bag because you can take it out into the field. So yes, a project bag, you can get all sorts of different colors or designs to really like pick out something that appeals to that specific person. And it's really hard to go wrong with a project bag. There are a whole bunch of different sizes. This is kind of like a medium size. This size I would say is probably a good, like, if you have no idea what size to get them, get this, because it can fit smaller projects, but I fit a small sweater in here, so it can fit some larger ones. But if you know they already have a bunch of small project bags, but they're using just like a tote for their larger projects, hey, maybe that's a good idea. My very yellow collection over here. If you're looking for like a good stocking stuffer type or like smaller gift, stitch markers. All like knitters and crocheters can almost always use more stitch markers. Now, I will say if you are getting stitch markers for a knitter, you don't necessarily need to worry about getting closed versus like locking stitch or open or locking stitch markers. If you're buying stuff for crocheters, I'll put a picture up here. You want to make sure you get locking or like the twist kind of stitch markers because they don't. If you put like a just closed little stitch marker into a crochet project, it's not coming out. I am always in need of stitch markers because they're these little tiny fiddly things that get lost in the couch so easily. Or, okay, I've put all of them in my current project and now I have another project that I want to cast on and I need more. And you can get like super cute little custom like ones with little dangles on it, or like cute little designs. Like I've seen some that look like cats, like a cat-shaped face. Those are really cute. There are colorful ones, whole bunch of different options. And I think especially like some of those more colorful or like the ones that have the charms on it, those again are things that like oftentimes I think like knitters, crocheters, like we'll get it if we're out at a festival and really like it. But if I just need stitch markers, I'm gonna just get the inexpensive, like the ones that I know I'm not gonna care that much about losing. But I do like having like cute little stitch markers. Like that's something I don't have very many fun stitch markers, but I definitely would use them if I had them. Now, for all of you non-knitters and crocheters out there who are looking to get gifts, you may be thinking, yarn, I'll just buy them a skein or two of yarn. And I would caution you against this. I've been gifted yarn, and I do really appreciate every time I'm gifted stuff. Like, it's oftentimes something from a local shop that is local to that person and not something that I would be able to get, or there's a story behind it. I find it very hard to use for a couple of reasons. One, like, it's usually kind of a special yarn, so it's not something that I'm like, oh, if I think I get a little too precious sometimes, and I'm like, I need the perfect project for this, and I can't think of the perfect project for this, so I'll just set it aside until I find it. But the other thing, and I know a lot of people run into this, is that when you're given yarn by somebody else, oftentimes the person who's buying it doesn't really know necessarily like how much to get. So, like, especially that single skein, it can be very difficult to even find a good project for a single skein. Now, there are, like, single skein projects out there, but it just, like, depending on the person, they might not really want to make any of those patterns. Or it might be a kind of yarn that that person just is not going to enjoy working with, whether it's the weight. For non-knitters, weight means like the thickness of the yarn, or the fiber content. Like, hey, maybe you're somebody who really like has a wool sensitivity. So if you get gifted wool, you're not going to want to knit with that because your hands are going to be really unhappy. Or maybe you find cotton yarn really tough to work with. Like, there are a whole bunch of these preferences that most of the time the person buying the gifted skein is not necessarily going to know. Now, if you do really want to buy some yarn for someone, ask them or like pay attention to what kind of projects they make. If there's somebody who knits a lot of socks, it's pretty easy to get a skein or two of sock weight yarn, and like ask the person who's working at the yarn store for some help when it comes to like picking out the yarn and the quantity. Like, double check, like, hey, do you think this is going to be enough for this kind of project? Like, socks are pretty easy to get a gift, like a gifted amount, and most people also, I think, are a little less like, I need the exact right color with socks. Now, if it's somebody who like really only knits garments, like only knits like sweater size things, that's where you run into a lot more. It's just a lot harder to get the right amount, the right like yardage, so length of like amount of yarn in the particular weight, in a color that that person is going to like, in a fiber. It just gets really tricky. So unless you really know that person's preferences, I would steer you away from gifting actual yarn. But if you want to give them the gift of future yarn, pick up a gift card to a local yarn store. Or if you don't have a local, like that person doesn't have a local yarn store, find out what their favorite like online yarn provider is and get them a gift card for that. I've gotten gift cards to our local yarn store, and I always appreciate it. I always use it because for me, it's a weird maybe a weird mentality thing, but like when I get the gift cards, it often like I will give myself permission to use those gift cards to purchase something maybe a little bit more luxurious than I would normally spend on yarn. Like, okay, this is a little bit pricier than I normally would, but I have this gift card, so I can treat myself to a really nice, fiber yarn or treat myself to this gorgeous hand-dyed yarn that maybe I wouldn't necessarily have budgeted for without that gift card. If you know somebody who is starting out knitting, or I would even say like a person who's been knitting for a long time, but especially somebody who like is out and about or has a lot of different projects going on, I found these really cute little knitting kits. They're these little hexagonal knitting kits, and they kind of have like all of the little notions you would need in this cute little pouch for most projects. And I think that's a really great gift because most of these notions in here, like having multiple pairs of scissors or multiple tapestry needles, stitch markers, stuff like that, like having a bunch of those little kits is great, especially if you know somebody who has a lot of different projects. They could, you know, potentially have one of those in a project bag in their normal like notion kit at home or in a different project bag. If they already have a couple of kits, like again, it's one of those kind of like the stitch markers where you kind of can't have too many of a bunch of these items, and also having them in a nice little kit makes it a lot easier to take with you. Because like I can't tell you how many times I've been out and been like, I don't have scissors, I don't have measuring tape, I don't have some of these things, but like to be able to have something that I can just keep in each project bag would make things easier rather than like, oh, I took this out to check on this other project and I forgot to put it back where I normally had it. Okay, let's get to some little bit less like specific knitting things and knitting and crochet and more like gifts, but they work really well for knitters, crocheters, stuff like that. First one is a good wool wash or like fabric care stuff. I picked this up years ago. I'm nearing the end. I probably actually need to order more, but this is something that you just add into water when you're washing your sweaters, especially like wool, those natural fibers and stuff like that. It helps clean it. This one has a little bit of a scent to it, and it also just helps condition your sweater. So it's going to help with the upkeep. Because that's something that I think can sometimes get overlooked of like, yes, if this person loves this craft and loves making stuff, but also loves wearing the things they make, like upkeeping and taking care of those things is going to mean that they last longer and they enjoy wearing them a lot longer. Fabric shavers, I don't know exactly where mine is, so I'm not going to hold it up, but I'll show you a picture. Fabric shavers are really great for anybody who like, especially sweaters, stuff like that, that like you wear and gets that like friction and stuff like that, and you get that little pill just to help maintain the look and the care. What is the maintain is the word I'm looking for. Yes, just to maintain those items. And I've got 2 more items on my list. The next thing is a good hand lotion. This is one that I use in the evenings. Because it does make my hands a little greasy, but it's so nice, especially in the winter as things get cold. But yeah, a good hand lotion, because like, depending on the fiber you're working with, sometimes that can kind of like draw moisture out of your hands. I found that with like a little bit of cotton and linen, a little bit. Wool most of the time doesn't do that, because some wools will actually have their natural lanolin still and make your hands feel better. But I've found like, especially in the colder months, my hands get dry and they'll like crack or get little not even necessarily cracks, but just like dry bits that catch on the yarn, and that drives me nuts when that happens. So having my hands really nicely moisturized, yay! If you're looking for something that like somebody can put on their hands and still do stuff, look for like non-greasy or fast absorbing type formulations. I know Kiehl's makes a really good one. I also have a couple of other just kind of drugstore ones that are pretty good. But this would definitely be a place where, like, I think, you know, maybe like treating them with something that's like a little nice, or if you're doing a care basket, maybe doing a little like small purse size one. Who are you barking at? It's just a neighbor. The final thing on my list is a hand massager. This is one from Bob and Brad, and I'm going to be talking about it more in an upcoming video, giving you all of my thoughts on it, because I just got it, so I'm still trying it out. I look like Baymax. But yes, a hand massager, like I've even seen some like shoulder massager thingies. But I think especially a hand massager is just such a nice treat for somebody who loves to craft, who loves knitting and crocheting, because like we do so much with our hands. I know, like, for me, I work at a computer. I'm typing and clicking mouses. Everything that people do, like, for work, even, you know, like talking to a friend of mine who works at a bakery, she has, like, carpal tunnel from holding down, like, a, like, little bottle dispenser thing. Like, there are so many things that we do for work and for all of the other things in our life that require the use of our hands. And then we come home and our relaxing thing is using our hands even more and putting even more stress on them. So being able to take care of your hands, just like, okay, I'm going to take a few minutes at the end of the day, or like, I've been knitting for a while, let me take a few minutes break. And the nice thing I've found with this so far is, like, I have this on and I can be looking at my phone, or I can be watching the TV, or I've even had a couple times where I've been like, I can click on things and like one-handed type. But yes, like being able to just take care of your hands, it's a very nice little luxury thing. And again, something that I think, like, a lot of knitters, like, I wouldn't have put a hand massager on a, like, need list. Would I really like it, and do I like using it now that I have one? Absolutely. So I think as a gift, this is a very nice, like, thoughtful gift. Definitely one of those, like, would not be a need, but is a want. So there you go. Those are my suggestions on some gifts for knitters and other fiber artists. What is on, if you're a knitter, like, what is on your Christmas wish list? Let's give some ideas for people who are looking for gifts for other people, or maybe even just ideas for themselves to be able to tell, like, friends and family, hey, these are the things that I would love to get. And if you've got, and I'd especially love to know if you have a small business that sells any of these things or makes stuff for knitters and crocheters, put them in the comments below so we can go check them out. Support small business. Woo! Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.